In the beginning, there was only a vast emptiness that stretched in every direction, without shape or boundary. It was a place of pure potential, quiet and unformed, containing no stars, no ground, and no breath of wind. Out of this silent void arose the earliest powers, each embodying an essential aspect of existence. They did not resemble people the way later beings did. Instead, they were more like overwhelming forces that set the universe into motion. One of these presences became the solid foundation beneath all that would ever live. Another stood above, creating a canopy that soared high overhead. In time, countless other energies appeared. Some represented deep darkness, some symbolized the spark of attraction that would bring beings together, and some hinted at the night, a realm of subtle mysteries. The presence that formed the ground below nurtured life in its depths, while the one above watched over it, arching protectively, yet often acting out of fear and caution. When the ground and the vault of the sky came together, they produced towering figures who embodied the raw power of early creation. These new beings were destined to shape the world in extraordinary ways. Some of them would control vast domains of nature, while others carried the seeds of crafts and knowledge. Yet among these new lives were also entities with features that seemed terrifying. Some possessed a single eye blazing with intensity, and some boasted so many arms that no simple count could grasp their full number. The one that spanned above grew concerned about the strength of these children. Unsettled by their potential, he pressed the most fearsome of them down into hidden chambers beneath the ground. This caused the nurturing force of the earth to ache with sorrow and anger. She felt these children, however imposing, had a right to be free. Her frustration grew until she approached one of the children who seemed clever and bold enough to challenge the oppressive force from above. That child agreed to help. With a blade shaped from an unbreakable substance, he lay in wait. When the moment came, he launched a sudden attack against the sky, neutralizing its power and ensuring it could no longer keep the children imprisoned. As a consequence of this violent act, drops of power fell upon the earth, giving rise to new entities fueled by vengeance and fierce energy. Meanwhile, the sky, once invincible, faded from direct rule, allowing the clever sun to declare himself the new leader over everything that existed. For a while, it seemed this change would grant the world a more balanced order. The ambitious figure who had dethroned the old power gathered his siblings around him, each of them taking on tasks that influenced the shape of mountains, rivers, and fields. One guided the vast waters that surrounded the land. Another introduced the idea of justice and balanced governance. Another represented the spark of illumination that appeared in daybreak and the glow of dusk. Yet the new ruler had learned a lesson from his predecessor. Power is fragile. He remembered exactly how he had overthrown the one before him. In time, a prophecy began to circulate, hinting that he too might one day be brought down by one of his own offspring. This prospect gnawed at his mind, making him suspicious and prone to desperate measures. He took as his partner one of his sisters, and together they had several children. The moment each child was born, however, he snatched the infant away and swallowed it, convinced this horrifying act would keep any potential challenger locked within him, unable to see the light of day. The mother of these children stood by in silent devastation as each new life vanished. She grew determined to save at least one child from this fate. Drawing on her cunning, she devised a plan. After conceiving yet another child, she carried him in secrecy. When labor pains arrived, she delivered the baby in a concealed spot, far from the fearful eyes of her mate. Then she wrapped a stone in cloth, making it appear to be a newborn. In his paranoia, the ruler swallowed this substitute without question, unaware he had been deceived. Meanwhile, the true child was spirited away to a hidden refuge, where gentle caretakers and protective guardians ensured his survival. They devised ways to mask any noises he made, fearing even the faintest cry might draw the attention of his all-consuming father. In that secret haven, the boy grew quickly, fed by the milk of a mystical creature, and watched over by those loyal to his mother's cause. As he matured, he learned of his lost siblings, trapped inside the very one who had sired them. Anger and resolve blossomed within him, for he realized he was the only one who could save them and bring down the oppressive reign. When the time came, he left the safety of his childhood refuge and ventured forth to confront the father who believed he had devoured every threat. Some tell that a figure representing wisdom assisted him, providing a concoction to force the arrogant ruler into a fit of retching. Others claim it was pure cunning on the young hero's part, urging his father to consume a potion that would make him lose control. Either way, the result was the same. The lost children, now fully grown, were expelled in a rush of fury. They emerged into the world enraged, prepared to unite with their clever savior. An act of rebellion was thus set into motion, dividing the immortal community into two camps. On one side stood the dethroner, who had become a tyrant, joined by many of his siblings. On the other stood the youngest son and the freed siblings, rallying any who shared their grievances. Old feuds and alliances surfaced. Colossal beings with a single glowing eye, once chained beneath the ground, now found a chance to repay the injustices they had suffered. Mighty figures with countless limbs joined in, grateful to be free from the shadows. They forged powerful tools for the young gods, an unstoppable bolt of crackling energy, a far-reaching spear that governed the waters, and a dark covering that could conceal its wearer completely. The battles that ensued shook the foundations of creation, lasting year upon year. Entire mountains are said to have collapsed from the force of thunderous strikes. Seas roiled under tempests whipped up by divine will. At times it seemed that the old ruler and his allies would maintain their hold, but the combined strength of the youngest son's coalition, armed with extraordinary weapons, began to shift the balance. Eventually, the old regime wavered and fell. The vanquished leader was cast down into a place even deeper than the one he himself had once used to bury others, a pit so profound that even immortals shuddered to contemplate it. Those who had steadfastly stood by him suffered a similar fate. After the dust settled, the rebel gods looked upon their new domain. The youngest victor, who had displayed such courage and ingenuity, took command of the realm above. One of his brothers, equally formidable, laid claim to the vast oceans, while another receded into the depths to preside over the realm of the departed. Their sisters took on roles that safeguarded important facets of the world, from the harvest to family unity to the warmth of the hearth. To mark their triumph, they erected a grand seat of power upon a peak that stretched so high it seemed almost to pierce the heavens. Though the tyranny of the old ruler had ended, it was clear that peace could not be taken for granted. Everyone remembered how rapidly the tide of fortunes could turn. The new powers vowed to keep watch for future threats, knowing that the very ground beneath them might someday give rise to further challenges. Yet for that moment, they allowed themselves to celebrate. Mortals who inhabited the earth looked up at this splendid new order, wondering how it might affect their lives. They saw these second-generation gods begin to claim distinct identities and domains, sometimes bestowing gifts of fire or knowledge, other times punishing those who dared show disrespect. Temples would soon be built to honor them, and rituals would be performed in hopes of drawing their favor. By freeing the children who had been swallowed, the newly appointed leaders had also demonstrated that even a prophecy could be fulfilled in a roundabout way. The old ruler's attempts to deny fate had, in fact, paved the path to his undoing. This was a lesson as timeless as the stars. Fighting destiny can often spark the very events one hopes to prevent. With the former tyrant banished to the pit, the victors surveyed a universe that felt both unclaimed and full of potential. They had driven off the oppressive rule that had terrorized children and stifled growth. Yet the triumph was just the first step in shaping the world under their new authority. Now came the question of how best to govern. The siblings who had fought side by side gathered in a high place. It was a peak so lofty that on clear days one could stand near its summit and see clouds drifting below, reminding them that they were no longer mere subjects, but rulers in their own right. Each sibling had contributed to winning the cosmic struggle, and each one had unique qualities that could become vital in maintaining balance. One brother spoke of the boundless waters, explaining how the rolling tides could nourish the land or erode it away, depending on how they were directed. Another brother, quieter but resolute, mentioned the depths beneath the soil, unseen realms where the departed might dwell. The eldest among them, the one who had rallied everyone to overthrow the old ruler, claimed the windswept sky and its thunderous storms. They all recognized that if they simply vied for dominance, no different from the father they had deposed, a new cycle of fear might begin, repeating the tragic pattern of swallowing and overthrow. Determined to avoid the mistakes of the past, they decided to divide the world into separate realms. By allotting each sibling a domain, they hoped to reduce the desire for conquest and keep their collective peace. One sibling cast lots, or so the story goes, perhaps as a gesture of fairness, to let fate decide who ruled what. The skies, the seas, and the realm of the departed became the primary prizes, each with a distinct character. The sky brimmed with shifting clouds and rolling thunder, a place of vast winds and the subtle arc of daylight. The seas teemed with life and concealed hidden currents, churning with endless energy that could erupt in storms or subside in gentle swells. The underworld lay wrapped in darkness, offering refuge or judgment to the countless spirits that would eventually depart mortal life. The sisters took no part in this drawing of lots, at least that is how some recount it. Yet they had equal authority in their own spheres. One guided the harvest, watching over the fertility of fields and all the grain that mortals learned to cultivate. Another guarded the sanctity of marriage, standing as both a jealous protector and a fierce defender of the bonds that held families together. Another tended the hearth, keeping alive the flame that symbolized safety and hospitality, a spark that mortals would carry into their homes. Each sister's role carried weight equal to that of her brother's, but in a way less concerned with asserting dominion and more aligned with caring for the essential rhythms of day-to-day existence. With this arrangement in place, they built splendid halls atop their chosen peak. Its slopes became a transitional zone between divine realms and the mortal world, a place of shining buildings, endless feasts, and spirited debates. While their father had ruled through raw fear, these new gods often chose to display their power in more visible and dramatic ways, shaping storms or orchestrating earthquakes when provoked, but also blessing humanity with bountiful harvests and safe voyages when pleased. In time, mortals, who already sensed the presence of these powers, began to dedicate shrines and altars to them. The father who wielded thunder received offerings from those seeking fair weather or victory in battle. The brother who reigned over the seas was petitioned by fishermen and sailors. The keeper of the harvest heard the prayers of every farmer, while the guardian of marriage became a central figure in weddings and childbirth rituals. As a result, a form of worship began to spread, a reciprocal exchange where mortals presented gifts in hope of favor, and the gods, in turn, provided protection and prosperity. Still, the cosmos held vestiges of the older times. Deep below lay imprisoned figures who had once threatened the stability of the world. While some of these captives came to accept their lot, others seethed with rage, waiting for a chance to re-emerge and challenge the new order. Occasionally, the earth itself rumbled, as though a hint of rebellion smoldered in its depths. The new rulers, though unified on the surface, harbored their own ambitions, rivalries, and grudges. It was a precarious balance of power, bound to be tested. Mortals remained ever watchful. Many recounted how the father's downfall had shown that no ruler, however mighty, was beyond defeat. Would these new authorities fall into the same cycle of paranoia? Their decisions would either confirm that fear or prove that a more benevolent rule could endure. For the moment, life improved for humans in many regions. Crops flourished, seafaring advanced, and art forms began to develop, all of which the gods seemed to support, each in a unique way. Yet the story was far from over. Though the second generation of powers had established itself, the universe still contained forces older than any single ruler. Conflicts born of ancient grievances could resurface. Myths from this period often hint at a series of monstrous challenges on the horizon, each poised to test the new god's resolve. For now, however, the grand division of realms signified a remarkable step toward stability, a victory over the chaos that had once prevailed. In the time that followed the division of realms, the new powers began to define their identities in ways both grand and personal. They were no longer simply the siblings who had united against the old tyranny. Each now carried a distinct presence, shaping laws of nature or guiding mortals toward prosperity. In splendid halls perched at the summit of their chosen refuge, they conversed, feasted, and occasionally quarreled. These disputes, though rarely as cataclysmic as the conflicts of the past, still hinted at the simmering tensions beneath their newly formed hierarchy. Among them was the one who governed thunder and sky, recognized by his majestic bearing and the sharp crack of lightning that heralded his presence. He had assumed the mantle of leadership not through quiet diplomacy, but by proving himself in battle and by unshakable confidence in his own destiny. At his side stood the companion who claimed guardianship over marriage and family. Regal, yet prone to jealous anger, she often confronted her spouse's wandering eye and the mortal offspring that occasionally resulted from it. Their union was filled with constant sparks, some affectionate, others more volatile. Another figure, calm yet resolute, ruled the vast oceans. When his temper flared, storms raged, drowning ships and reshaping coastlines. When appeased, he allowed calm waters and bountiful catches of fish that sustained entire coastal regions. Beneath the land surface, the quieter brother watched over the domain where souls passed after death. Though he maintained a stern distance from the affairs of the living, he played a pivotal role in preserving the natural order, ensuring that the departed found rest or judgment in his dim realm. Then there were the sisters. One oversaw the vital cycles of growth, teaching mortals how to plant seeds that would bloom into life-sustaining crops. She received pleas whenever drought threatened or blight loomed. Another sister tended the sacred flame that symbolized both hospitality and continuity. Mortals lit their hearth fires as a reflection of that divine flame, believing it connected each household to the realm above. Yet another sister carried herself as a protective warrior, focused on strategy rather than brute force, offering guidance to the brave and cunning. Poets later told how this sister sprang fully formed from the mind of the one who wielded thunder, a remarkable birth that underscored her link to wisdom and intellect. Not every member of this pantheon carried an air of solemnity. One was associated with music, poetry, prophecy, and the healing arts, often depicted with a stringed instrument whose melodies could soothe both mortals and immortals alike. Yet beneath that gentle exterior lay the capacity to unleash punishment if angered or dishonored. His twin sibling roamed forests with a bow, watchful over wild creatures, guiding the moon across the night sky. She cherished independence and guarded her chosen companions fiercely, punishing anyone who breached the sanctity of her domain. There was also the fierce embodiment of warfare's raw aggression, a presence whose thirst for battle was rarely tempered by caution. This one could galvanize troops with unstoppable ferocity, yet often found himself at odds with more tactical approaches. By contrast, the power of love and allure slipped almost unnoticed through the corridors of immortals and into mortal hearts alike. She could spark unions that reshaped entire kingdoms or ignite jealousies that drove conflicts on a grand scale. Two others completed the circle. One was a brilliant craftsman forging wondrous items that shone with divine radiance, though he walked with a noticeable limp and sometimes carried grudges that bubbled under his usually measured demeanor. The other dashed between realms, guiding travelers and shepherding souls, swift and clever, whispering mischief into unsuspecting ears when it suited him. Mortals prayed to him for safe roads and profitable bargains, though they knew he remained ever unpredictable. In time, an additional figure rose to join them, though his parentage was unique and his manner often unpredictable. Revered for the ecstatic revels he presided over, he brought forth a plant that, when cultivated, could induce joy or chaos. He attracted bands of celebrants who danced until they lost themselves in trance-like states, suggesting that his domain stretched beyond mere festivities into the realm of altered consciousness and unbound energy. Some said he was a late arrival to the Grand Assembly, occasionally causing small shifts in who was counted among the highest circle, but his presence left a lasting impression. Together, these deities represented nearly every force or passion mortals could experience. Their stories interlaced in countless ways. They bickered, sought alliances, fell into rivalries, and intervened in mortal affairs, revealing the very human-like qualities that enthralled those who worshipped them. Songs and epic poems describe the times when these beings walked among the living or guided favored individuals toward heroic achievements. To mortals, they were both protectors and unpredictable hazards. To one another, they were family, bound by shared victories against the old tyranny, yet prone to quarreling when pride or personal vendettas came into play. On the highest peak where they now resided, regular feasts brought them together to discuss the fate of the world below. At these gatherings, they might debate how best to address mortal overreach or argue about which god deserved the honor of a new temple that mortals were planning to build. Sometimes these debates ended in compromise. Other times, they ignited small-scale conflicts that rippled through mortal realms, influencing harvests, weather patterns, and warfare. Mortals, for their part, recognized the roles of these divinities and built shrines to honor them. Pilgrimages became common, with travelers braving harsh terrains to visit sacred sites. Rituals ranged from simple offerings of grain or fruit to elaborate festivals featuring dancing, athletic contests, and theatrical performances. In each event, participants strove to please or appease whichever power they believed held sway over their current endeavors. A city by the coast might dedicate an annual rite to the one who ruled the seas, while an inland farming community might focus on celebrating the goddess of the harvest. Rival cities sometimes clashed under the respective banners of different gods, each convinced that its patron would grant victory. During this formative period, legends took shape. People recounted the wondrous moment when the goddess of wisdom emerged fully clad in armor, or the mischievous tale of a shepherd discovering how to craft a new musical instrument. They spoke of how the warrior goddess once bested the savage power of raw conflict, or how the smith found a cunning way to expose two unfaithful lovers in front of the entire pantheon. Each story served to underscore the idea that these deities, though immortal, embodied a spectrum of behaviors that mortals could admire or fear. Despite the overall sense of triumphant stability, a faint tension persisted. Even the one who ruled thunder could recall how quickly fortunes changed for the father he had overthrown. As a result, he kept a cautious eye on any sign of new prophecy, ensuring that if fate ever foretold Yet another downfall: he would be the first to know. Others among the pantheon nursed private wounds or unspoken yearnings, secretly planning for the day they might overshadow their peers. In this manner, the second generation, no longer mere usurpers but fully ensconced in power, prepared to face fresh challenges. Although they seemed united at a glance, their differences and personal goals sometimes steered them into conflict. Often, these divine skirmishes spilled over into mortal life, affecting kingdoms, stirring epic journeys, and birthing legendary figures whose names would endure through centuries of storytelling. As time went on, their collective presence shaped the foundation of an entire civilization's culture, art, and moral codes, ensuring that even ordinary people felt intimately connected to the grand drama that played out atop the towering seat of the gods. They had earned a secure foothold, yet the echoes of the old order had not entirely faded. Whispers circulated of those who refused to accept the defeat of the previous reign. Far below the surface, in a place even darker than the realm of the departed, a restless force brewed. Some who had once stood beside the overthrown ruler still clung to the belief that his rule could be restored if only they mustered enough resolve. In this tense atmosphere, the youngest leader, who had freed his siblings, began to sense that a reckoning lay ahead. Not all of the powerful family who belonged to the previous generation had been vanquished. Some were merely in hiding, waiting for the chance to reclaim what they saw as rightfully theirs. As rumors intensified, it became clear that the conflict to come would surpass any single skirmish. It would be a test of whether the new reign could truly stand against the might of the older powers. Eventually, the clash erupted. Aided by those siblings who had long been confined, as well as a few among the older generation who secretly approved of the new rule, the second wave of rulers prepared for war. On the opposing side, the dethroned leader and most of his loyal companions stood ready, each bearing the ancient strength that once kept the entire cosmos in thrall. The memory of how those children had turned against their own father fueled resentment, driving the old guard to fight with reckless tenacity. For what many described as 10 endless years, the combat raged across the realms. Lightning cleaved the sky, hurled by the one who had proven his mastery of thunder. Coastal cliffs crumbled under the force of earthquake and tempest, driven by the brother who commanded the sea. Entire mountainsides groaned and fell as boulders the size of towers were flung by unimaginable hands. Stories told of a din so deafening that mortals below prayed day and night, unsure who would prevail or what would remain once the onslaught finally ended. Key moments defined the struggle. Some who had been forced into the depths came forth with newfound purpose, forging weapons of legendary power. One was a crackling force that could strike from the heavens and shatter even the strongest defenses. Another concentrated the might of the oceans. A third allowed its bearer to move unseen, shifting the balance in surprise attacks against the enemy. Armed with these implements, the younger alliance gained an edge, though the old ruler and his allies did not concede easily. Many times it seemed the tide of victory might turn. Late into the conflict, the decisive blow came. With a surge of electrified wrath, the sky-summoning champion unleashed an attack on the old ruler so overwhelming that no defense could hold. One final quake rocked the battlefield. The once dominant figure fell, and his loyal companions lost heart. As their resolve crumbled, the old regime collapsed. The victors chained those who had resisted them and cast them far beneath even the darkest realms, guarded by the very forces they had once oppressed. Only after these chains were secured did the younger gods pause to catch their breath. The scale of the war had left scars on the land, evidence of the great fury unleashed. Yet the triumph was undeniable. From that moment on, the new pantheon held sway without serious dispute, free to shape mortal destinies according to their distinct temperaments and desires. Tales of this victory became central to mortal songs and celebrations, a testament to the volatile power struggles that shaped the cosmos. Victorious and newly settled in their towering abode, the younger gods turned their gaze toward a more stable rule. Yet rumblings from the depths signaled that not everyone in creation accepted their ascendancy. The earth itself, bound by grudges over her children who had been locked away, stirred with deep unrest. From her hidden womb came a new brood, formidable in size and cunning, determined to challenge the gods who now claimed power. These towering figures, whispered about in hushed tones, possessed a strength unlike anything the second generation had yet faced. They combined brute force with a measure of near immortality, making them formidable adversaries. Confident after their previous triumph, the younger pantheon prepared for another bout of cosmic strife, though they had little idea just how fierce this new assault would be. One by one, these colossal challengers emerged into the open, gathering into a force that cast shadows as far as the eye could see. Some claimed they possessed powers rivaling the gods of thunder and sea themselves. Others warned that only by enlisting mortal help could the immortals hope to prevail, for these new adversaries seemed to have an inborn resistance to purely divine might. Prophetic voices insisted that a champion, sired by a god but raised among mortals, would tip the balance. When the assault began, it shook the world from mountaintop to coastline. Roars boomed across valleys, and the sky darkened with clouds that churned in response to the rising conflict. Clashes erupted near the throne of the newly established gods. Lightning flashed, the ground split, and boulders soared overhead. Mortals who observed from a distance trembled, knowing they could do little beyond praying that the gods would stand fast. Though the younger pantheon summoned storms, wielded blazing bolts, and struck with tridents capable of splitting the seas, the giants advanced steadily. It appeared at times that the defenders would be overwhelmed. Then, at a crucial moment, a mortal hero stepped into the fray. While mortal hearts often falter under such pressure, this one fought with a resolve and strength that confirmed the prophecies. Supported by the goddess of strategy and aided by potent gifts from others, he struck blows that no pure immortal could manage. Spurred by the hero's audacity and the gods' combined force, the giants were gradually forced back. One after another, they fell or were hurled down into forbidding chasms, unable to withstand the onslaught. In the end, the final few stood defiant on a craggy ridge, but the might of thunder and the mortal's blade felled them. With that victory, the gods reasserted their claim. For a time, the realm stood quieter, and mortals who had been caught in the crossfire breathed easier. Yet the earth's anger was not fully spent. Word spread of a monstrous threat, more terrible than even the giants, a shape so immense and terrifying that some gods wished to flee rather than face it. Before long, that threat would surface, testing the second generation once again. In the aftermath of the giants' defeat, the gods allowed themselves a moment of relief. They had quelled the wrath of the earth's colossal offspring, forging a temporary lull in the endless cycle of challenges. Mortals in distant lands, feeling the tension ease, returned to their own tasks, tilling fields, raising livestock, and exchanging goods, almost daring to hope that no further upheaval would arise. But something still stirred in the depths below. Some claimed it was the Earth's final act of vengeance, while others believed it was a new threat birthed from the cosmic residue of ancient rivalries. Whichever the truth, rumors spread of a terror beyond imagination, a creature so large and furious that it dwarfed even the giants who came before. Whispers reached the gods, describing an entity wrapped in serpents, spitting fire and belching smoke from countless jaws. The mention of its name alone, Typhon, struck fear into the heart of any who heard it. As word of Typhon's existence grew, the younger pantheon could sense that the threat extended beyond any mere giant or imprisoned titan. Some among them, thinking back to the old tyrant's downfall, recognized that pride often precedes a fall. They warned one another not to underestimate this new menace. Despite their caution, when Typhon finally emerged in full force, the very air seemed to shudder at his roar. Great wings blotted out the sky, fiery breath scorched the earth, and serpents hissed around limbs that appeared part dragon, part human, and entirely monstrous. At the monster's arrival, some gods momentarily lost their resolve. Legends hold that a handful fled the battlefield out of sheer horror, assuming they faced certain doom. Mountain peaks crumbled under Typhon's wrath, rivers boiled, and the land itself quaked in protest of such an eruption of power. In this maelstrom of chaos, the one who commanded thunder resolved that fear could not dictate their fate. Gathering his energies, he confronted Typhon head-on, launching bolt after bolt of lightning. The first clashes were colossal. Typhon bellowed with the force of a massive storm, meeting each thunderous strike with an onslaught of burning wind. Even from a distance, mortals could see the sky light up as if day and night were merging in one continuous raging flash. The smell of scorched rock hung in the air. Observers who lived long enough to tell the tale spoke of a fierce struggle that looked like nature itself, turning against the world. Bit by bit, the thunder wielder managed to drive Typhon back, though the monster refused to yield. On more than one occasion, the creature's clawed hand nearly seized him. Yet each time, a fresh volley of lightning tore into Typhon, driving the beast into a painful retreat. Finally, in a decisive clash, the Thunderer unleashed a barrage that rocked the heavens, toppling Typhon and pinning him against the molten veins of the earth. The ground gave way beneath the monster's thrashing, swallowing him into a place where fiery eruptions could hold his immense form at bay. From that day forward, legends claim that Typhon remains trapped beneath a fiery mount, his anger manifesting as raging volcanic eruptions and violent tremors. Even centuries later, the occasional plume of smoke or river of molten rock is sometimes explained as Typhon's ongoing struggle to break free. Having emerged victorious once more, the gods solidified their sovereignty, demonstrating that even a threat of unimaginable scale could be tamed, so long as they remained resolute. With Typhon subdued, no other colossal force arose to directly challenge the second generation's rule, at least not on such a spectacular level. Mortals rejoiced, offering thanks and sacrifices in newly built temples. Scribes penned epic verses recounting the dramatic confrontation, while storytellers wove the tale into traveling performances that entertained and instructed the populace. Through these narratives, everyone learned a lesson about perseverance, courage, and the tenuous line between pride and downfall. In time, the gods directed their energies away from defending their thrones and focused more on governing the mortal realm. Some acted as patrons of individual cities, guiding laws and civic rituals that shaped daily life. Others engaged in personal feuds or turned their gaze to the realm of mortal heroes, setting quests that tested both bravery and morality. Yet the memory of Typhon remained a sobering reminder that, though they reigned supreme, they could never become fully complacent. Somewhere in the vast tapestry of existence, hidden forces could always be brewing, ready to erupt without warning. With the most devastating threats defeated, the old tyrant, his loyal followers, the towering giants, and the final fiery monster, the younger gods found themselves standing unopposed atop their lofty seat of power. Where once the cosmos had been in constant flux, it now settled into a more predictable rhythm. Each god fully occupied a distinct sphere of influence, whether that meant governing the sky's storms, tending to the earth's bounty, or safeguarding the underworld. Mortals, meanwhile, grew in confidence and resourcefulness. Although they could not rival the might of immortals, they learned to cultivate crops more efficiently, to build sturdier vessels for trade and exploration, and to record their ideas in forms that would last generations. They honored the gods through seasonal festivals, dedicating temples and statues that reflected their gratitude or awe. In turn, the gods occasionally intervened with blessings or punishments, reminding mortal societies of the precarious balance between reverence and complacency. Over time, a series of legendary figures appeared, heroes born of divine and mortal lines, or sometimes merely those driven by extraordinary ambition. Some of these heroes undertook quests at the behest of the gods, retrieving sacred objects or slaying beasts that still roamed the fringes of civilization. Others ended up on their adventures almost by accident, entangled in cosmic disputes or cursed with tasks that would either destroy them or elevate them to renown. In many such tales, the gods revealed complex personalities, some kind, some mischievous, some proud, to the point of folly. Even members of the same divine family found themselves at odds over mortal affairs. A goddess might promise safe passage on the seas, only for another deity to whip up storms out of jealousy or spite. A healing god could bestow miraculous cures on one city while ignoring pleas from a rival region. The result was a tapestry of myths where every border skirmish, every sudden plague, and every triumph in battle could be traced back to divine favor or anger. Amid these ongoing stories, the pantheon solidified its place in mortal culture. People far and wide recognized the name and power of the thunder wielder who served as king among them, the queen who fiercely guarded marriage, and the many others who oversaw everything from love and warfare to craftsmanship and the harvest. Rituals became more elaborate, involving choral singing, dramatic performances, and athletic competitions thought to please the watching immortals. These gatherings weren't merely religious, they also fostered social unity, bringing together different regions under a shared sense of identity and reverence. Though the second generation reigned supreme, it was not an era of perfect peace. Disputes arose among the immortals themselves, sometimes triggering localized chaos in the human world. Yet compared to the cataclysmic upheavals of old when cosmic wars raged and mountains crumbled, this period felt relatively stable. Priests and oracles sprang up in major sanctuaries, interpreting signs believed to come from the gods. Cities declared certain deities as their patrons, building opulent shrines that reflected both local pride and devotion. It was during this era that myths flourished in the collective consciousness. Traveling bards repeated dramatic episodes of divine conflict, weaving moral lessons into entertainments that enthralled listeners around hearth fires or in amphitheaters. Through these retellings, the younger gods cemented their legacies not just through raw power, but by becoming part of the cultural fabric, figures that parents referenced when admonishing their children or that statesmen invoked when justifying a diplomatic venture. In essence, this was the age when the second generation of gods made the world their own. They shaped it according to individual temperaments, forging bonds, sometimes alliances, sometimes rivalries, with mortals who depended on them. Although smaller-scale threats and personal vendettas would continue to appear, the once constant swirl of cosmic rebellion had calmed to a steady undercurrent of daily life. Observers of later centuries looked back on this time as a golden tapestry of triumph and storytelling, bearing witness to the final establishment of a pantheon that would inspire worship and narratives for millennia. In the wake of their great victories, the new pantheon presided over a transformed world. On their lofty peak, they ruled with confidence, each deity carving out a reputation that mortals came to know through both favor and fear. This period became associated with prosperity, artistic expression, and a deepening sense of human potential. People crafted monuments, inscribed epic poems, and held regular festivals, all reflecting the gods' profound influence. Strikingly, a host of new heroic tales began to fill the mortal imagination, Some heroes were the children of gods and mortals, walking a precarious line between extraordinary power and human frailty. Others were mere mortals who, through cunning or unwavering bravery, managed deeds that astonished entire communities. Time after time, such figures found themselves entangled in divine intrigues. A city on the brink of invasion might pray to the Lord of Thunder, while a lone warrior might gain special items from the smith's divine forge or glean crucial insights from the goddess of strategy. The mortal realm reverberated with stories of triumph and tragedy, all shaped by the interplay between human determination and the sometimes fickle dispositions of immortals. During this era, mortals refined their own societies. City-states rose to prominence, each one proudly claiming a particular deity as its patron. One boasted the goddess of wisdom, erecting majestic temples dedicated to rational thought and orderly governance. Another looked to the sea's master for maritime success, building powerful navies and thriving harbors. A rural community might consider the harvest goddess its special guardian, celebrating each successful crop with lavish rituals. Through these variations, an intricate web of alliances and rivalries formed, not just among humans, but among the gods who favored different territories and peoples. It was also a time when oracles and seers came into prominence. People believed that, by interpreting signs and utterances granted by certain gods, they could glimpse the future or find solutions to dire problems. Rulers journeyed from distant lands to consult these sacred voices, hoping to stave off disaster or secure victory. Although the gods rarely spoke in plain language, often wrapping their messages in riddles, mortals placed great trust in these cryptic hints, convinced that destiny itself had been revealed. In the background, lesser-known deities and nature spirits quietly shaped day-to-day existence. Nymphs watched over groves and springs, while river gods influenced the flow of commerce and settlement. Each locale formed its own blend of worship, ensuring that devotion was never a simple matter of reciting the same prayers everywhere. Travelers who ventured far might find entire regions paying homage to gods scarcely acknowledged in their home cities, reflecting the vast tapestry of belief that continued to evolve. Despite the relative stability of the era, not every story ended in harmony. Disagreements within the pantheon sometimes erupted. One goddess might grow resentful of another's growing fame in the mortal world, or a god known for his quick temper might lash out when he felt disrespected. These divine quarrels could touch off earthquakes, storms, or floods in mortal lands, serving as reminders that harmony among the new rulers was never guaranteed. Even so, these disruptions paled in comparison to the cosmic upheavals of past generations. Those who chronicled the age often described it as a golden time. Mortals achieved notable feats of architecture, philosophy, and art, all while weaving heroic sagas that placed the gods at the center of every success or misfortune. Festivals became more elaborate, transforming into grand spectacles that combined athletic games with dramatic reenactments of famous myths. People from distant regions traveled to witness these events, exchanging stories and customs, fostering a shared cultural identity that spanned far beyond any single city's walls. By now, the younger pantheon had fully established its place in the cosmos. Each god or goddess wielded a distinct authority, and mortals paid tribute accordingly, praying for rain, safe voyages, healing, or simply luck in love. The threat of a sudden uprising from the old generation or an eruption of monstrous forces seemed remote. The world, at least on the surface, was at peace with the gods, and in that peace, mortals dared to push their own boundaries, exploring new lands, refining their crafts, and pondering the mysteries of existence. Yet nothing in mythic tradition remains static forever. Even the greatest epochs can end, replaced by new chapters of the eternal drama. In time, the legends of this era would inspire later societies, be adapted by other cultures under different names, and echo through countless art forms. The Olympian gods stood, as ever, at the heart of it all, unshakable in their majesty, yet never entirely beyond the reach of shifting fates. With the second generation now firmly in control and their most formidable adversaries defeated, a new equilibrium took shape across the land. Cities prospered under the watchful gaze of their chosen patrons, and traveling minstrels wove epic tales of how these gods had toppled the old tyrants, battled giants, and subdued the final monstrous onslaught. Over the years, these stories deepened into the lifeblood of an entire culture, informing architecture, literature, and moral outlooks in ways that would long outlive the mortals who first told them. Temples rose to spectacular heights, reflecting not just piety, but the collective pride of communities that felt intimately connected to the immortals. Stonemasons carved columns and pediments depicting scenes from the great wars of the cosmos. Sculptors captured the divine in marble statues that illustrated poise, power, and nuanced character. Thunder in one god's poised arm, the promise of abundant harvests in the gentle stance of another. Artists found endless inspiration in these legends, painting vases with scenes of heroic quests or cunning acts of a mischievous trickster god. Festivals honoring the gods grew increasingly elaborate, blending religious observance with social unity. At these gatherings, dramas were performed that dramatized the pivotal myths: battles in the heavens, the forging of mighty weapons, the cunning rescue of swallowed siblings. Athletic contests paid homage to divine patrons believed to prize excellence and physical prowess, uniting spectators from different regions under a shared sense of awe. Beyond artistic endeavors, the deities influenced the development of early philosophies. Some thinkers grappled with the nature of justice and order, referencing the downfall of the old tyrant to argue that oppressive rule, whether divine or human, inevitably meets its end. Others highlighted the cycle of transgression and punishment found throughout the gods' stories, noting that even near limitless power can be undermined by personal flaws like jealousy or pride. In time, a few voices began to question the literal truth of these accounts, seeking deeper symbolic meaning. Yet even skeptics found the myths a profound way to discuss human nature, the cosmos, and fate. Nor were the gods themselves static in mortal imagination. Their stories continued to evolve. New myths sprang up to explain everything from sudden storms to the creation of rare gemstones or peculiar rituals. In one region, a minor forest spirit might be declared the offspring of a major deity, its grove becoming a small but significant pilgrimage spot. In another, an ancient local festival might merge with worship of a more widely revered goddess, creating fresh layers of legend. Over time, the pantheon felt both grand and localized, a tapestry of overlapping worship that bound together countless villages and cities. The second generation's reach didn't stop at cultural boundaries. Over centuries, their names and attributes traveled into neighboring lands, where people adapted the gods to fit their own languages and customs. The thunder-wielding king took on new titles, while his siblings assumed identities within foreign pantheons. Yet the heart of the stories remained intact: the cycle of cosmic power struggles, the forging of alliances, and the occasional cooperation with mortals to confront unimaginable perils. Eventually, new empires with different pantheons rose and absorbed the tales of these gods, sometimes mixing them with their own. Temples might change inscriptions, or newly conquered cities might adopt the immortals of their conquerors, weaving the older myths into fresh narratives. Scholars penned treatises comparing various deities across cultures, discovering parallels that fascinated them. Across it all, the shining tales of the younger pantheon's ascendancy never fully faded. Even in distant ages, glimpses of these stories would resurface, reframed in painting, literature, and philosophical musings, preserving the core themes for future generations. What resonates so strongly in these myths is their blend of the grand and the deeply personal. They describe thunderbolts that reshape mountains, yet they also depict jealous quarrels and heartfelt loyalties that are all too familiar to mortals. The gods stand both above and among the people who worship them, simultaneously cosmic forces and flawed characters. In that tension, ancient listeners recognized a reflection of their own struggles to govern passion with reason, to balance ambition with humility, and to remain vigilant against the destructive potential of unchecked power. Through it all, the second generation's legacy became a permanent fixture of cultural identity. Their tales served as cautionary fables and aspirational epics, moral guidance and source material for creative expression. Even those who later ceased to worship them found in these legends a timeless exploration of destiny, family bonds, and the delicate interplay of chaos and order. As the eras passed, the luminous presence of these deities endured, shining through each retelling, reminding anyone who heard their stories that, at the core of creation, there will always be a struggle for balance, a dance between what once was and what might be. From their towering seat of power, the new gods observed how their legends flourished in mortal lands, passed down through songs and ceremonies that spanned generations. The people who recited these myths did more than merely preserve ancient tales. They imprinted each story with their own hopes, fears, and changing values. Over centuries, entire philosophical systems emerged to question or reinterpret the gods' significance, but few completely discarded the storytelling tradition that had been woven into every aspect of life, from law and politics to art and family customs. Even when vast empires rose under different banners and new faiths spread across the known world, the essence of these stories remained. They appeared in scholarly writings, guiding metaphors about the hubris of rulers or the cyclical nature of power. They colored the visions of poets and playwrights, providing frameworks for exploring questions of honor, betrayal, vengeance, and redemption. In the realm of architecture, tributes to the second generation of gods could still be found, standing beside newer monuments as silent witnesses to an era when mortals believed the skies and seas were governed by divine personalities who listened to prayers and judged mortal actions. Many ages later, people would look back on the narratives of how a shapeless void gave birth to primordial powers, how an oppressive reign was dethroned by its own child, and how wave after wave of monstrous assaults tested, but never quite toppled, the second generation's rule. These sagas illustrated the conviction that order can emerge from chaos, yet remains eternally susceptible to upheaval. They taught that no matter how strong a monarch might seem, destiny could still intervene, and that even the most fearsome creatures could be overcome with courage and cunning. Ultimately, the legacy of this pantheon lay not in a single definitive telling, but in the multiplicity of stories inspired by their deeds. Each retelling cast the gods in a slightly different light, emphasizing one trait or another: a goddess's maternal protectiveness, a warrior's reckless bravery, a trickster's cunning, or an artist's sensitivity. In this way, the immortal family continued to evolve as cultures changed. Their timeless dramas offered endless perspectives on nature, morality, and the human condition. Through every war, natural catastrophe, and cultural shift, the second generation of gods endured in the collective imagination. They came to represent a bridge between the sublime and the mundane, a vivid reminder that the universe is governed not by static forces, but by personalities capable of love, hate, generosity, and fury. To mortals, these deities were both terrifying and reassuring, capable of unleashing floods or bestowing rich harvests. To those who pondered deeper meanings, They personified the grand sweep of existence, creation born from emptiness, tumultuous changes of power, and the perpetual striving to find balance against the unpredictable tides of fate.